My big dream, I like to sing. I love to sing. So
Richard Goodall wasn't trying to go viral. He wasn't chasing fame, begging for a spotlight, or submitting demo tapes to big studios. He was just doing what he'd always done, cleaning classrooms, taking care of a middle school in Indiana, and singing a little when he thought nobody was listening. But in 2022, one ordinary moment in a cafeteria turned into the start of something no one could have predicted. It was just another day at West Vigo Middle School in Terre Haute, Indiana. Richard, a janitor who had worked there for over 2 decades, was finishing up some cleanup when students began gathering in the lunchroom. Like always, he started singing. This time it was Don't Stop Believin by Journey, a song he loved. A staff member pulled out their phone and hit record. No lighting, no stage, just a man singing with soul in a quiet hallway. That's when everything changed. By the next morning, that video was already spreading across TikTok, Facebook and Instagram. Comments flooded in, views climbed into the millions, and by the end of the week, national media had picked up the story. For most people, this was just another viral clip, but for Richard, it was overwhelming. He was a school janitor, born and raised in Indiana, who had never once thought of himself as a celebrity. He didn't have a manager, an agent, or a publicist. What he had was a mop, a voice, and a community that saw something real in him. But here's where it starts to go deeper. That moment inside a cafeteria wasn't a fluke. It was a reflection of everything Richard had been quietly carrying for years. While the internet was just meeting him, the people of Terre Haute had known that voice for a long time. Richard wasn't just the janitor. He was the guy who greeted every kid with a smile, who gave out corny jokes when someone looked down, and who always hummed to himself while scrubbing the floors. That kind of person doesn't just show up on a stage. They've been preparing for it their whole life, whether they realize it or not. And when America's Got Talent came calling, everything got real. It was 2024 when producers officially invited Richard to fly to Los Angeles and audition in front of the AGT judges. He had never even been on a plane before. He didn't own a fancy wardrobe or have a vocal coach on standby. What he did have was his voice, his nerves, and the people back home cheering him on. For Richard, the idea of traveling across the country for a talent show wasn't just exciting, it was terrifying. Still, he said yes, and from that moment forward, everything about his life started to shift. When he walked on stage, you could see the nerves in his shoulders, in the way he introduced himself to the judges. But once the music started, all of that dropped away. As the first note of Don't Stop Believin rang out through the auditorium, something clicked. His voice wasn't just good, it was powerful, raw and emotional, in a way you don't often hear on reality TV. The audience stood, the judges leaned in, and Heidi Klum slammed the golden buzzer, sending Richard straight to the live shows. The confetti rained down, and he stood there frozen, overwhelmed, tears in his eyes. That moment was real, but so was everything that came before it. What came next wasn't just a competition, it was a tribute. Every time Richard walked onto that stage after the golden buzzer, he treated it like a thank you letter to everyone who had stood beside him for years. He didn't come with an ego or a backstory filled with drama, he came with heart. In the quarter-finals, he chose How Am I Supposed to Live Without You? A song that took on a whole new meaning once you knew who he was singing for, his fiancée Angie. His performance wasn't loud or flashy, it was soft, controlled and deeply personal. People watching at home could feel the weight behind every lyric, and that's what made him stand out. He wasn't performing like a reality TV star, he was singing like someone who had lived those words. Then everything shifted again. For the semi-finals, Richard showed the judges and the audience that he wasn't a one-note singer. He came out with Eye of the Tiger, a bold move that carried intensity, grit, and a completely different energy. It wasn't just about vocal range anymore, it was about confidence. That moment proved Richard had more to offer than just a viral backstory. He was showing growth right in front of the country's eyes. By the time he made it to the finale, he knew exactly what message he wanted to send. He went back to the music that had brought him to this stage in the first place, Journey, and sang faithfully. The song wasn't just a nod to his roots, it was a full-circle moment. It carried every emotion he'd been holding on to since the cafeteria video first surfaced. Grief, hope, fear, love, and the quiet strength that had gotten him through it all. And then it happened. He won. But there's more to that moment than just a trophy. Richard Goodall was crowned Season 19's winner of America's Got Talent. The confetti, the standing ovation, the bright lights, it all seemed larger than life. But for Richard, that night didn't just validate his talent, it validated something much deeper. It told him that all the years he spent singing, when no one was listening, all the rejection and pain he kept buried, weren't for nothing, because before all this, he had tried. Years earlier, he had auditioned for The Voice. No callback, no explanation, just silence, and that silence stuck with him, like a quiet reminder that dreams don't always get answered the first time you ask. Still, Richard kept singing. Even after that rejection, he found joy in a small gospel group that travelled and played locally. He wasn't trying to make it big anymore, he was just trying to stay connected to the music. Then the pandemic hit, and just like that, the group dissolved. No shows, no venues, nothing to hold on to. That loss wasn't loud or dramatic, but it chipped away at the part of him that still believed music could take him somewhere. But the hardest hit was still to come. In 2021, Richard lost his first wife, Patricia Sue, to kidney cancer. She had been his rock, the one who believed in his voice, even when no one else did. Losing her shattered the quiet rhythm he had spent years building. The house they shared suddenly felt too quiet. The days grew longer. The music started to sound different. But he didn't stop showing up. He kept going to work, kept humming in the hallways, kept being the kind of person who brings calm to chaos. And even though the grief never went away, he folded it into his music. That's what made his AGT performances hit so hard. They weren't just songs. They were layers of real pain, real healing, and real hope. What people didn't see on stage was the physical toll it all took. While Richard was pouring his heart into every performance, he was also battling something off camera, something most fans didn't hear about until much later. In 2024, right in the middle of his rising fame, Richard underwent hernia surgery. It was a necessary procedure, but not something he made public at first. He kept quiet about it, even as the whirlwind of interviews, rehearsals, and performances pushed his limits. The recovery was slow, and for someone used to moving at a steady rhythm, that pause gave him space to reflect. It wasn't just about healing from surgery, it was about catching his breath after the most intense year of his life. He had gone from school hallways to stadium stages, from anonymity to national headlines, and for the first time in a while he had to sit still. But even through that recovery, something incredible was happening. His relationship with Angie, the woman who had stood by him before any of this fame began, continued to grow. Angie had met Richard long before cameras ever showed up. She didn't see him as a star or a viral video. She saw the man behind it all, the one who carried grief in his chest and music in his soul. She grounded him during the highs and helped him stay centered during the lows. In fact, just days before the AGT finale, they got married, quietly, no press, no headlines. Just a personal moment shared between two people who had walked through so much together. That decision said more than any speech ever could. It wasn't about status, it was about finding peace in a life that had been anything but peaceful. Then came a chapter that nobody expected. With Angie's encouragement, Richard decided to search for something he had never dared to explore, his biological father. He had grown up not knowing anything about the man who helped bring him into the world. That absence had always been there, but he had made peace with it, or at least he thought he had. But Angie believed he deserved more: closure, connection, something solid to stand on. So using Ancestry.com, they began the search, and what they found was shocking. Richard's biological father was alive, living in Indianapolis, a retired K-9 officer and Army veteran who had no idea Richard even existed. Along with him came 3 siblings Richard had never met. When they finally connected, it wasn't some tear-filled movie moment. It was awkward, surprising, and deeply emotional all at once. And here's what made it even more meaningful. Richard later posted on social media, he has no children, so you can imagine his shock to find out after all these years he has a son. He used to play drums, guitar, and mandolin. Suddenly, the pieces made sense. Music wasn't just a passion, it was something woven into him from birth. This new relationship didn't erase the pain of not knowing, but it gave him something he didn't realize he was missing, a sense of origin. But the community never left his side, even before the AGT checks came in, before sponsors reached out or gigs rolled in. It was the local people of Terre Haute who supported Richard. Teachers, neighbors, old classmates, and strangers pulled together funds to make sure he could get to Los Angeles for his audition. They didn't do it for a shout-out, they did it because they believed in him. And as the journey kept moving forward, Richard carried that support with him like armor. Most people assumed the story would end there, with a trophy and a goodbye. That's what usually happens. A feel-good moment on a reality show, some applause, a few interviews, maybe a guest appearance or two, and then the person fades back into regular life. But with Richard Goodall, nothing followed the expected path. After winning America's Got Talent, fans, producers, and reporters all assumed one thing: that Richard would pack up, sign a record deal, and chase music full-time. They imagined him moving to Nashville or Los Angeles, leaving behind the janitor life and trading it for concert stages and national tours. But what he did next stunned everyone. Instead of running toward the industry, Richard quietly went back to work as a janitor at West Vigo Middle School. Same building, same floors, same halls. After all the confetti and all the headlines, he walked right back into the job he'd done for over 20 years. And when people asked him why, his answer wasn't dramatic. He didn't try to spin it into some motivational quote or deep philosophy. He just said the truth. He liked his job. He liked the kids. He liked the staff. He liked the structure of showing up, working hard, and being part of a place that had shaped his life. That moment told fans everything they needed to know about who Richard really was. The AGT title didn't change his character. It didn't make him feel like he was above the routines he'd built over decades. In fact, staying at the school helped him stay grounded. Fame hadn't erased his need for stability. It had only added more pressure. So instead of abandoning the life he knew, he decided to balance both worlds. And that decision didn't stop the opportunities from coming. Invitations poured in, and Richard accepted them one at a time. But he did it with the same sincerity and humility that people had loved from the start. He performed the national anthem at an Indiana Pacers game, his voice echoing through a packed arena. He took the stage at Indiana's Circle of Lights, a holiday tradition that drew thousands. He was invited to open a show for Howie Mandel, turning the tables from contestant to colleague. And he even appeared at the Riverside Festival of Lights, where families who had only seen him on screen now stood in person to hear him sing. But none of these moments pulled him away from who he was. Even after the fame, Richard kept posting photos of himself waxing school floors, cleaning classrooms, and prepping hallways for the next school day. And that's what set him apart. Where most people might see national attention as an escape plan, Richard treated it as an extension of his life, not a replacement for it. Still, he wasn't standing still. Even while holding down his job at the school, Richard was planting the seeds for his music career. Slowly, intentionally, no rushed contracts, no PR stunts, just real music, made on his terms. And when he was finally ready to release something official, it wasn't a big record label that made it happen, it was Richard himself. On August 29, 2025, he released his first single, Long Time Coming. The title said it all. The journey hadn't been fast, it hadn't been smooth, but it was happening. He announced it with a simple post. "Hi, this is Richard. I just wanted to share my story with you all. No frills, just facts." The music wasn't just a product, it was a process. Richard recorded Long Time Coming in Nashville, a city where legends and newcomers walk the same streets. But he didn't treat the studio like a fantasy. He treated it like work. He showed up, he listened, he experimented, he took his time. For someone who had once only sung in a cafeteria, the studio gave him something new, space to grow as an artist, not just a performer. As the song rolled out, he didn't try to go viral again. He didn't chase a trend. Instead, he shared short, honest previews of the track on social media, just enough to let people hear the tone and feeling behind it. And the tone matched everything fans had seen in him from day one, heartfelt, steady, and grounded in real experience. But Richard also knew he wasn't meant to do this alone. While launching his solo career, he joined a local group called Sugar Street, performing with them across Indiana. These smaller shows gave him the chance to stay connected to local fans while continuing to build his identity in music. It was never about being flashy, it was about staying rooted while taking meaningful steps forward. Working with new managers helped him navigate the business side of things, shows, bookings, and the growing interest in his story. But Richard didn't let the industry shape him. He stayed focused on building a career that wouldn't just peak quickly and fade, but one that would last. Then came another surprise, one that didn't involve a microphone. Publishers started reaching out, asking if he'd consider turning his story into a book. For many, his story had all the elements of a memoir: quiet perseverance, grief, loss, rediscovery, and a late-in-life rise to recognition. Though no deal had been finalized, the interest alone said a lot about how deeply his journey resonated with people. Angie, his wife, even hinted that a biopic might not be out of the question. And when someone jokingly asked who should play Richard in a movie, he laughed and said, Zac Efron. It wasn't about who could act like him, it was about being able to laugh at the idea that his life might someday be on a movie screen. But even as his story expanded, his connection to AGT stayed strong. During the 20th anniversary special of America's Got Talent, Richard returned to the stage that started it all. He opened the night with Eye of the Tiger, this time as a winner, not a hopeful. The performance was loud, passionate, and full of confidence. He stood shoulder to shoulder with an ensemble of past contestants, people who had all walked their own versions of this impossible path. Backstage, Richard was shown a clip of his original audition, the cafeteria janitor, who had walked on stage nervous, quiet, and unsure. Watching it hit him harder than he expected, because that wasn't just a performance anymore. It was a reminder of everything that had changed since that day. But just when everyone thought the story had leveled off, Richard confirmed what fans had quietly hoped all along. Music wasn't just a short chapter, it wasn't a detour or a bucket list item. It was the thing he'd always wanted to pursue, the thing he had always loved but didn't believe he was allowed to take seriously. And now, that passion had direction. The confirmation changed everything. By the end of 2025, Richard finally said it out loud. Music wasn't just a passion, it was his path forward. And once he said those words, everything started making sense. All those years of singing to himself in school hallways, humming through lunch breaks and belting out rock classics while sweeping floors, they weren't hobbies, they were pieces of his identity, the most natural part of his day. So when he told the public that America's Got Talent hadn't made him a singer, it had just given him a bigger stage, he wasn't being dramatic, he was just being honest. That moment didn't create the music in him, it just amplified it. And for thousands of fans who had been hoping he'd keep going, that confirmation was exactly what they needed to hear. But even then, Richard wasn't rushing into anything. He didn't quit his job overnight. He didn't throw himself into every opportunity just to stay visible. Instead, he started building the next chapter slowly, deliberately, and with intention. He thought carefully about what kind of music he wanted to make, what kind of performances felt meaningful, and which doors were worth opening. One of those doors led him back to his own community. In November 2025, Richard headlined the Vigo County YMCA Inspiration Gala, a community event that had nothing to do with fame and everything to do with purpose. The gala raised money for scholarships to help local kids attend summer camps and YMCA programs, but for Richard, it was more than just a performance, it was a homecoming. He performed Long Time Coming live, giving the crowd their first full listen of the song that had quietly marked the beginning of his music career. He followed it with Don't Stop Believin, the song that had made him go viral back in 20... The audience didn't just clap, they sang with him. Teachers cried, families smiled, and for a moment it felt like the entire city was singing one man's story back to him. But Richard wasn't just looking back, he was also thinking ahead. Behind the scenes, he had started having serious conversations about the future, not just in terms of music, but life. His janitor job had given him structure and peace for over 20 years, but now his schedule was getting busier, his responsibilities were growing, and the opportunities were starting to multiply. So he began thinking about retirement, not because he was tired, but because he was finally ready to live a life that matched who he had become. The idea of leaving West Vigo Middle School wasn't easy. That place had shaped him, comforted him, and lifted him up. But the next stage of his life required something new, and that next stage, it might just start in Florida. Richard and Angie began exploring the possibility of relocating to Florida, looking for a warmer, calmer lifestyle where he could work on music, rest between commitments, and enjoy the space to simply live. He talked openly about wanting to buy a home, not a mansion, not something flashy, just a place that felt like their own, somewhere he could write, record, and take deep breaths between big moments. But he didn't stop there. He shared that he was also exploring collaborations with Simon Cowell, hoping to work with the man who had helped introduce him to the country. It wasn't about chasing power, it was about bringing things full circle. He also started planning his first full-length album, thinking through the kind of songs that could truly represent his story. Talks of live tours and brand partnerships followed, each one shaped by the same sincerity that first made him famous. Even with so much happening, Richard never lost touch with the people who lifted him from the start. As his music career continued to grow, he made a point to keep fans updated, not through stylized press releases or corporate-managed social media, but through simple, personal posts. He shared photos from the studio, clips from rehearsals, and glimpses of his everyday life. Nothing about it felt curated or forced. It was just Richard being Richard, open, honest, and grateful. And people responded. Messages poured in from fans across the country, not just praising his voice, but thanking him for giving them hope, for reminding them that it's never too late to dream, that you can work quietly in the background for years and still find your moment. For those who felt unseen, too old, or too far behind in life, Richard's story meant everything. But Richard didn't just take in that support, he held on to it. He understood what it felt like to wonder if your chance had already passed. He knew what it was like to keep showing up every day, holding on to something inside you that nobody else noticed. That's why, even as his schedule filled with gigs and travel, he didn't stop doing what he had always done. Yes, he was performing more. Yes, he was recording music. Yes, he was in active talks about his next steps in the industry. But by all accounts, Richard Goodall never left his janitor job. That's the part that caught people off guard the most. How could someone go from standing on a national stage, winning a televised competition, releasing music on major platforms, and still go back to cleaning classrooms, to waxing floors and fixing cafeteria chairs? Because for Richard, it was never about fame, it was about meaning. His job wasn't just a paycheck, it was part of his identity, part of his rhythm, and even as the music world welcomed him in, he still found peace in the routine of his old life. He didn't view his job as something to escape, he viewed it as the place that kept him grounded, long before the world started watching. And maybe that's what fans connected with most, not just the talent, not just the voice, but the quiet way Richard handled everything, with humility, with patience, and without pretending to be anyone else. While other stories fade after the final episode, Richard's was just beginning. He didn't try to force his future to happen all at once, he let it grow, he took his time, and he invited others to come along for the ride. That's the part people didn't expect, but secretly hoped was true. That behind all the applause, the bright lights, and the perfectly edited TV moments, there was someone real, someone who didn't forget where he came from, someone who walked into the spotlight without letting go of the things that gave his life meaning. And as Richard steps into this next chapter, whether it's more songs, a tour, a book, or even a movie, the truth is already clear. He didn't win America's Got Talent just because he could sing. He won because every note came from a life that was lived, not staged. Richard's future isn't mapped out, but it's moving forward. He's not trying to take over the charts or dominate headlines. He's not fighting to stay relevant or prove his worth to the music industry. What he's doing is something much rarer. He's growing slowly, on purpose, and in a world obsessed with instant success, that might be the most radical choice of all. Behind the scenes, he's been putting in work, not just creatively, but logistically. Richard has started planning his first full-length album, thinking carefully about which songs speak to his experience, which messages feel worth sharing, and what kind of sound represents his voice, not just musically, but emotionally. He's also having early talks about touring, but like everything else he does, it's on his terms. He's not looking to live out of hotel rooms or burn out chasing every stage. Instead, he wants to build a schedule that lets him perform, rest, and still enjoy life with Angie, the person who helped him rediscover his own story. And there's something else too, something more personal. Richard has expressed how deeply he wants to use his platform to give back, whether it's supporting scholarship programs, performing at community events, or simply being present for the people who never stopped believing in him. He's staying connected to his roots in ways that go beyond any stage. Recently, he was invited to speak to middle school students, not just as a performer, but as someone who had walked the same hallways, scrubbed the same floors, and made a national dream come true without ever leaving who he was behind. That kind of presence can't be faked, it's lived. And here's what might be the most unexpected twist of all. Even after everything, after the music releases, the media attention, the golden confetti, and the 20th anniversary special, Richard still hasn't officially retired from his janitor job. He's still listed on staff at West Vigo Middle School, still helping out, still involved. It's not about the paycheck, it's about the people, the community, the feeling of being part of something real. To him, success wasn't about walking away from his old life. It was about letting that life evolve without forcing it to disappear. Because when Richard Goodall confirmed that music was his true calling, he wasn't announcing a transformation, he was revealing a truth that had always been there. He had been a singer all along, just one waiting for the right microphone. So yes, he's planning more music. Yes, he's dreaming bigger. But no, he's not letting the world change him into someone he's not. He's just getting started. And the best part? He's doing it his way. Sometimes, it's not the fame that defines a person, it's how they carry it. Richard Goodall didn't walk off that AGT stage with a plan to become famous. He walked off with the same mindset he had walked in with, sing because it matters, not because it gets you noticed. That's what's kept his story alive, long after most TV moments fade into memory. It's also what makes him stand out in a world where attention is often louder than authenticity. Fans who meet Richard say the same thing over and over. He's exactly who you think he is, kind, humble, a little shy, always ready with a smile. There's no manufactured image, no scripted sound bites. The man who sang in a school hallway is still the man who shows up early, thanks the sound crew, and checks in with people after a show. That's not branding, that's just character. But Richard's real legacy might not be his music at all. It might be the quiet permission he's given others. especially those who've worked in the background, those who've been overlooked, or those who thought their dream had an expiration date. What he's proved is simple but powerful. It's never too late to be seen for who you really are, and the timing of his story matters too. In a post-pandemic world where so many people are rebuilding careers, families, identities, Richard's rise reminds us that growth doesn't always come loud or fast. Sometimes it shows up in the places you've always been, with the people you've always known, when you finally decide to believe in yourself again. He didn't fake anything to get on stage. He didn't pretend to be younger, cooler, or more connected. He brought his real story, and America responded. Because when something's real, people feel it. That's why, as his music career unfolds and new chapters are written, Richard will likely keep surprising people, not with flashy moves or headline-grabbing drama, but with his quiet consistency, with his choice to keep showing up, to keep growing at his own pace, and to keep honoring the life that shaped him. So whether his next move is a tour, an album, a book, or simply another day on school grounds, one thing is certain: Richard Goodall isn't chasing the spotlight. He's just letting it follow where he already shines. What Richard built wasn't just a moment, it was a movement in slow motion. Not the kind that trends for a weekend, or the kind that gets turned into merchandise or hashtags. This was something quieter, something rooted. He didn't ride a wave, he created one through honesty, resilience, and decades of patience. And the people who follow his journey aren't just fans, they're witnesses to a truth that too many overlook. You don't have to shout to be heard. He didn't audition because he thought he deserved a spotlight. He didn't sing because he wanted validation. He did it because it was part of him. From gospel halls to school cafeterias, from long drives with his band to late nights of grief and healing, music was never a performance for Richard. It was survival. And now that it's finally his career, he's treating it with the respect it deserves. Not by rushing, not by selling out, but by making each decision count. Collaborations that feel aligned, songs that come from somewhere real, appearances that honor the people who walked beside him long before anyone knew his name. Even his dreams are different. He's not chasing luxury or status. He talks about wanting a simple studio, a porch where he can sit and write, a place where he and Angie can grow old without pressure. His dreams aren't about being seen by millions, they're about staying seen by the people who matter. And that's something the industry can't manufacture. Because what Richard confirmed isn't just that he's making music now, it's that he always was. The world just finally caught up, and in doing so it learned something too. Success isn't about how fast you rise, it's about how true you stay while rising.